A man left work late one night and began a familiar drive home. He spoke to his family along the way. He sent a message saying he would arrive soon. Then his phone went silent. His car was never found. Not on the road, not in a ditch, not in a garage, not in either country he traveled through. For 6 months, it was as if both he and his vehicle had vanished into nothing. Then, half a year later, his body appeared. Not along the highway, not near where he was last seen, but inside a barn in a small village on the opposite side of the country, hanging in an attic space his family used regularly, with evidence that didn't add up. And what police ruled a suicide only made the mystery deeper. Mateusz Kawecki was 30 years old. For the past 5 years, he had been living and working in Hanover, Germany as a construction worker. He shared an apartment with his father, who worked there as well. But his life was still rooted in Poland. His fiancée lived hundreds of miles away in a small village called Lipia Góra. She was pregnant. Their first child was on the way. Because of the distance, Mateusz made the long drive back to Poland whenever he could. It wasn't a short trip. Over 400 miles, across the German-Polish border, through highways he knew well. He had done it many times before. On the night of March 28, 2018, after finishing work around 11:30, Mateusz got into his 1998 BMW and began the drive home. The plan was simple. Drive through the night, arrive in the morning, be with his fiancée. Nothing about the trip stood out as strange. No arguments, no unusual behavior, no signs that anything was wrong. It was just another long drive home, and everyone expected to see him the next morning. The next morning, Mateusz was still on the road. Around 10:30 a.m., his father called him. Mateusz answered. He sounded tired, but calm. He explained that the drive had taken longer than expected. There had been multiple accidents along the way, traffic jams that forced him to sit still for nearly 2 hours, but he was making progress. He told his father that he was near Szczecin, a large city close to the German-Polish border. From there, he had a little over 100 miles left to go. Around the same time, Mateusz sent a message to his fiancée. He said he would arrive in about 2 hours. Everything sounded normal, delayed, but normal. That message would be the last confirmed communication anyone ever received from him. As the hours passed and Mateusz still hadn't arrived, his fiancée began calling. The phone rang, but no one picked up. She tried again and again. Still ringing, still no answer. By late afternoon, worry turned into fear. Where had he gone? Why wasn't he answering? And the biggest question of all, where exactly was Mateusz when he made that last call? If you're following along so far, stay with me, because from this moment on, nothing about his disappearance makes sense. As the evening came and went with no sign of Mateusz, his family panicked. His fiancée contacted his sister in Germany. No one could reach him. The phone continued to ring, but there was never an answer. Later that night, Mateusz's mother went to the police in Poland. She tried to report him missing, but officers discouraged her. They told her it was too early, that adults sometimes disappear for a day or two, that he would probably show up on his own. He didn't. When the family finally managed to file reports in both Poland and Germany, the situation became even more complicated. German police said they couldn't investigate because Mateusz had disappeared in Poland. Polish police said his phone used a German SIM card and couldn't be tracked. Each country pointed to the other. No one took responsibility. The family asked authorities to trace Mateusz's cell phone. They were told it wasn't possible. Later, Polish police claimed his phone never even connected to a Polish network, which made no sense. because his father had spoken to him while Mateusz was supposedly already in Poland. There were no border checks between Germany and Poland, no records, no confirmed camera footage showing his car crossing, no clear last location. It was as if Mateusz had slipped through a gap between two countries, not missing in Germany, not missing in Poland, just gone. With little help from authorities, Mateusz's family took matters into their own hands. They traced the entire route he was supposed to drive, from Germany into Poland, through towns, highways, back roads. They stopped at gas stations along the way. They asked employees if anyone recognized his face, if they remembered a white BMW pulling in late at night. They went down side streets, checked rest areas, parking lots. They asked businesses for surveillance footage. Most either had nothing or had already overwritten their recordings. The family printed posters with Mateusz's photo. They hung them in towns near the border, at bus stops, on shop windows. They appeared on television. They pleaded publicly for any information. For months, they searched, and for months there were no answers, no sightings, no car, no clues. 6 months passed. It was as if Mateusz and his BMW had been erased. Then, in September, everything changed. A neighbor approached Mateusz's mother with a strange complaint. For weeks, there had been a foul smell coming from their barn. At first, everyone assumed it was a dead animal, but no one could find the source. The odor kept getting worse. Eventually, the neighbor asked if he could check the upper part of the barn. Half of the barn had been walled off, creating a small room with an attic space above it. Mateusz's mother agreed. The neighbor climbed up. At first, he saw what looked like a pile of clothes. Then he realized it wasn't clothes at all. It was a human body, or what was left of one. A decomposed torso, a detached head. Nearby, 2 nooses were hanging from the roof beams. On the floor below, there was a backpack. Everything found there appeared to belong to Mateusz. Police were called. The remains were taken away. And soon after, authorities confirmed what the family feared. It was Mateusz, but there was a problem. Mateusz hadn't been driving toward this village. He had been heading in the opposite direction. The barn was hundreds of miles from where he was last supposed to be, across the entire country. If this discovery shocked you, stay with me, because what was found next only made the story stranger. Police quickly concluded that Mateusz had taken his own life, but the evidence left behind told a far more confusing story. For days after the remains were discovered, the family found something the police had missed. One of Mateusz's shoes. Inside it was his detached foot. It had been lying in the barn the entire time, somehow overlooked during the initial search. This raised an immediate question. If something so obvious had been missed, what else had gone unnoticed? Then there were Mateusz's teeth. Several of them had been knocked out and were stuck to his clothing with what appeared to be dried blood. Experts later pointed out that while a body can separate after hanging for a long time, teeth don't simply fall out like that after death. There were also dark patches on his clothes that looked like bloodstains. Inside the backpack found near the body were a few personal items. Among them was a Polish water bottle filled with cigarette butts and an orange juice box. His family said Mateusz didn't drink orange juice. It was something he actively disliked. Every piece of this could have been important. Every detail could have helped explain what happened, but none of it was tested. No forensic analysis, no DNA checks, no deeper investigation. Police returned all of Mateusz's belongings to the family, just like that. None of it was analyzed. Through all of this, one massive question remained unanswered. Where was Mateusz's car? The white 1998 BMW he had driven from Germany was never located. Not along the highway, not abandoned in a field, not in a river, not in a garage, not in Poland, not in Germany. Nowhere. Searches were conducted. Tips were followed. Nothing turned up. Even stranger, the keys to the BMW were never found. Neither was the vehicle registration. Yet Mateusz's wallet had been inside the backpack in the barn. Some of his belongings made it there. The car didn't. In cases of missing persons, vehicles are usually found. Crashes leave debris. Abandoned cars get reported. License plates are spotted. But Mateusz's BMW vanished completely, as if it had never existed. A man can disappear. A car usually can't. Another strange detail emerged in the days following Mateusz's disappearance. His phone didn't immediately shut off. According to the family, it remained on for several days afterward. Calls continued to ring through. Then, on March 30th, something odd happened. Mateusz's phone placed a call to his uncle. It lasted less than a second. The call never fully connected. The uncle never even received it. It looked like an accidental dial, as if the phone had been handled, or shifted, or triggered by movement. Police statements about the phone only added more confusion. At one point, Polish authorities claimed Mateusz's phone never connected to a Polish network at all, which conflicted with the fact that he had spoken to his father while supposedly already in Poland. German police said they couldn't track it because the disappearance happened across the border. Polish police said they couldn't track it because it was a German SIM card. No clear data was ever produced. No confirmed location, no timeline. The phone was eventually found in the barn with the rest of his belongings. But where had it been in the days after he vanished? And who, if anyone, had it with them? If you think the phone is the key to this case, you're not alone, because the next detail makes the timeline even harder to believe. There was another problem with the official story. The barn. According to police, Mateusz had been hanging in that attic space since shortly after his disappearance. But his family didn't believe that was possible. They used the barn regularly throughout the summer. The attic area wasn't hidden. From inside the barn, you could see up toward the space where the body was found. Yet no one noticed anything. No smell for months. No sign of a body. Not until late summer. And this wasn't a busy city. It was a tiny village. A place where everyone knew everyone. Where a stranger walking around would immediately stand out. If Mateusz had somehow returned there on his own, someone should have seen him. If someone else brought him there, someone should have noticed that too. And if his body had really been there the entire time, it's hard to believe no one would have discovered it sooner. Which raises a chilling possibility. What if Mateusz wasn't in that barn all along? What if his body was placed there later? Despite all of these unanswered questions, police reached their conclusion quickly. They ruled Mateusz's death a suicide. No extended investigation. No reconstruction of his final movements. No forensic testing of the items found in the barn. The case was effectively closed. When the family pushed back, asking about the missing car, the strange phone activity, the teeth, the foot, and the possibility that the body hadn't been there the entire time, their concerns were dismissed. Appeals were made. Requests for further inquiry were filed, but nothing changed. Authorities maintained that there was no evidence of foul play. To them, the matter was settled. Yet nearly every piece of the story raised new questions. Questions that were never answered, and contradictions that were never addressed. The official conclusion stood, despite massive inconsistencies. With no further investigation, only theories remained. The first was the official explanation, that Mateusz took his own life. Supporters of this theory point to the long overnight drive, the exhaustion, the stress of working far from home, the pressure of an upcoming child, the idea that he may have been struggling silently, but this explanation leaves too much behind. It doesn't explain why his car was never found. It doesn't explain the teeth knocked from his mouth. It doesn't explain the foot left in the barn days later. It doesn't explain why his body appeared in a place he was never traveling toward, and it doesn't explain why evidence was ignored. The second theory is far darker, that Mateusz met someone on the road, that something went wrong, that he was killed either intentionally or accidentally, and that his death was staged as a suicide. In this version, his body was moved. The nooses were placed later. The car was hidden or destroyed, and items were arranged to support a narrative. It would explain the strange injuries, the delayed discovery, the missing vehicle, but it raises another question. Who could have done this without being seen in such a small village? The third theory sits somewhere in between, that something happened during the drive, an accident, an argument, a situation involving someone else, possibly hinted at by public transport tickets reportedly dated after his disappearance. Maybe Mateusz left his car behind, maybe someone helped him, maybe someone didn't, and when things spiraled out of control, the truth was buried. Each theory explains part of the story. None explain all of it. When you step back from every detail, one truth becomes clear. Mateusz didn't vanish in some remote wilderness. He didn't disappear on an uncharted path. He disappeared on a straight, familiar road home. A route he had taken many times before. A journey that should have ended with him arriving safely the next morning. Instead, he was gone. And when he finally reappeared, it wasn't where anyone expected. Not along the highway, not near the border, not close to his fiancée, but inside a barn on the opposite side of the country, with injuries that didn't line up, with belongings that raised more questions than answers, with a missing car that was never recovered. Mateusz didn't just disappear. He reappeared in a way that created more questions than answers. So now the question is yours. Do you believe Mateusz took his own life, or do you believe his death was staged? Where is the BMW he drove that night? How does a car vanish without leaving a trace? How did his body end up in a barn hundreds of miles from where he was headed? And why were so many strange details never investigated? If one theory makes more sense to you than the others, share it. If one piece of evidence stands out as impossible to ignore, point it out. Because this case only moves forward when people keep asking the questions that were never answered. Somewhere between Germany and Poland, Mateusz Kawecki vanished. Not in the middle of nowhere, not far from help, but on a road that should have taken him straight home. 6 months later, his body appeared in a place he was never meant to be. His car was gone. The answers were gone with it. And every detail meant to explain his death only made the mystery deeper. Somewhere along that drive, something happened. Something no one has ever been able to piece together. And to this day, no one knows what really happened on that drive home.